What's up, guys? To anybody that's going to tune in, I'm running late. What's up, guys? Sorry I'm running late tonight. Hopefully Mac Blunts didn't go ahead and go to sleep on me. We'll roll this fucking joint real quick and we'll get this fired up. Fuck yeah. Let me know how they do for you. What are you running, Slapbox? What's up, guys? Running a little bit late tonight. Hope everybody's doing all right. Hopefully Mac Blunts will jump in here with me in a minute. I had a good friend who passed away, a friend that passed away, and they were having a memorial concert thing for him this evening, so we stopped by that, and we're running a little bit late. So I'm trying to get this joint rolled real quick. Had a couple topics we can chat on tonight. Actually came with something to talk about this week. Last week I felt like I left Mac hanging. Sorry, I know this isn't all that entertaining, but I'm trying to roll this joint so I can have something to smoke while we do this. So yeah, buddy passed away. He was a bass player. They were having a downtown get-together thing. And it's life. What do you do? You know? I think the only thing that's been constant in my life is people checking out. It seems to happen way more often than it should. Where's back? What's good, dog?
What up? What up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, man. Sorry I was running late.
Nah, man, no worries. No worries. No worries. Yeah, man, I had a pretty rough day myself, man.
Everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine, man. My wife's taking it hard, but so first I have a guy get injured at work, and I had to end up in the hospital with him. And then I come home and take my dog to the vet, and we had to put her down today. So she's been with us, as long as I've been married, 15, 13 years, like, so yeah, it's been a pretty eventful day myself.
Sorry, man. That sucks. Yeah, dogs are family, man.
Uh,
It's just,
sure,
I've
bro.
always had dogs myself, and when we moved to Colorado, I had three, and they all passed while we lived in Colorado. And I was on the fence about whether I even wanted to get another one again. It's just so tough,
That's
It's like,
what my wife is right now. She doesn't know what she want to do. Like, she's like, no more animals, no more animals. So,
that was how I was for a while, man. And then you just, it's an awesome thing, having pets, and just especially with the kiddo, we had to. I'm a sucker for pit bulls, man. I've always had pits my whole life.
for sure.
My
That's
most of
I
my
think
adult life.
that's the down south thing, bro. Like, we love our pit bulls and bullies down south, man.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, it's like when I thought about getting another dog, I never once thought about what I was gonna get. It was just where am I gonna get another pit,
It's
you know?
right, right, right. I've never ever wanted another dog besides a pit.
Yeah, no,
Or
no,
maybe,
I've never
maybe
talked to people with dogs.
I lied. I've always wanted a pug or or one of the dogs that kind of look like the pug but a little bigger, like
The American Bulldog.
American Bulldog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan, so I'm a sucker for them Bulldogs. But like, the problem with the Bulldogs, especially, they don't live long, man. Like, if you get 10 years out of one of those dogs, you had the rare one because there's so many problems from breeding and just so many, heart issues, lung
Yeah,
issues. And
it's.
it's a tough thing.
I think it has a lot to do with their skull structure, man, and the way their nasal cavity is kind of built. I don't think their blood gets oxygenated very very well. Speaking of oxygenation, kind of brings me right into. So I had a cut of something that I really wanted in the garden, man, and I'm gonna see if you can tell what went wrong, right? So took the cut, looking beautiful, put it in the soil, watered it, came back, and the plant looked like shit. It's probably done. It's probably done, honestly. What do you think happened? And pH the water, no nukes. I was just, wetting the soil, let it acclimate, and then,
But you just put it in a wet rooter cube and it just tanked.
No, you know what? That's very important. So I put it in a solo cup,
Just like a solo cup with water or dirt.
dirt, dirt, and I watered it.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. No drainage.
Exactly. Yeah. I forgot to cut holes in it, bro. I was like,
You know
yo,
what's funny
rookie
about that?
mistake, bro.
Is I've had plants. I always use red cups. I always use solo cups. I like to go into plugs, rooter cubes, and then into solo cups full of soil. So, and then once you've got a solo cup, that's ready to go into a 1 gallon, like straight out.
Right.
But like I've done that before where like I go to transplant into 1 gallons and I realize this huge clone has been living in a cup with no drainage and it just thrives. Like it's
Wow.
always the healthiest looking one. But like as soon as you do that accidentally, what happens to you happen and they
Bro.
just tank and you're like, I don't know what I did wrong. And
And
like then you look and you're like, oh, I forgot to cut holes in the cup, bro.
I'm hoping that, I changed the soil. When I pulled the root, dude, it was so soggy, bro, and like wasteland. I pulled the roots right out with no touch, nothing. And so I replanted it, and I'll see if it bounced back. But hopefully it does, because I really
Yeah.
want. It was a cut
Usually
of
by the
Martian
time,
Punch Bowl, man.
yeah. What was it?
Martian Punch Bowl. It was like I think I sent you a picture of the flower. It's like the huge, ginormous monster plant in my garden, bro. It's just. It tells everybody in the garden, like, I'm here. I want to show you I'm the best. I'm the biggest. Like, even out of my gear, bro. Like, I'm just looking at that one like, you did like that, you know? So, great work, Nate, on that, man. I got to give you a shout out on that, man. That Martian Punch Ball, something special. I didn't find the purple pheno that I found the first time I grew it. It made me want to grow it again. But this green pheno, man, is just.
You ran it from seed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's dope, man. Yeah. Man, it's like I always have that kind of luck with like, and that's part of why I never really get in love with strains because I'm prone to like, I'll make a mistake or I'll do something and then I'll realize like that was the only cut I had. And then I'm just like, I'll find another one. Like, I'll just find another one. Like, and it's like, here's what's funny is like sometimes you pop one and it's like one plant, right? You get one plant and it's amazing. And you go back to those seeds and you just can't find that same whatever it was that you loved or whatever it was you fell in love with. And you're just like, dude, there's got to be something better there.
Right.
And then you just keep looking and it's just not. And like that's happened to me a bunch too.
In a 10-pack of seeds, bro, if you find a fire pheno, 9 times out of 10, bro, like, come on, bro, like, that was probably your chance, like, in a 10-pack.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what's funny is I've had that happen where I pop like, you know, just a handful of seeds and then I find something and I'm like, dude, this is just amazing. There's got to be something else. And then there's other times where I'll pop more seeds, you know, a bigger pheno hunt, and I just can't find something that's impressive, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird like that. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know.
But it's like my homie said, man. We all had that strain, the best strain ever that we never kept.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, dude, I got a lot of them that got away from me. Like, there's, if I did early on, I mean, I've been growing most of my life, and I known then that I was going to be making genetics for a living, like I would have moved completely differently
right.
because there were so many times where I had shit stashed and I was just like, my only thought was just growing flower. And so that's how I approached whatever seed
Bro,
stash that I had.
for sure,
And then
man.
before I knew it, like I've completely blown through whatever pack or two packs or handful of
Yeah.
packs that I have. And now I look back on some of those strains and I'm just like, man, I would pay so much money to
Dude,
be able to
that's a
work with those
great point,
again.
man. Like when you're growing, exactly like you said, when you're growing for not when you're not breeding, you're just growing, you know, like ran through so many beans. But you know, I think I got a problem where I've tried to find the right time to pop these beans, and what happens is they just stay vaulted forever, and then you know they become less valuable. You know, as time goes on, the seed is less and less valuable. You
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah. I mean, like,
and I guess I got to come out of that. You know, and just pop the beans and see what you got. Why hold them? Like
that's what I
these, like,
tell people, like sitting on seeds, there's a certain amount of like, sometimes it's nice when you see something blow up and then you realize you got that shit in your seed box and you're like, oh, I bought those back when I could get my hands on them and now it's something that's always cool. But like you said, the reality is 3 to 5 years they start to lose. I've noticed you start to lose some viability at like the 5 year mark.
for
So when
sure.
you start getting up towards 10-year-old seeds, even if they were kept well, you're probably looking at like, you know, 30% diminished viability or more, and then going on from there. So it's like every time you see somebody talking about, oh, my dad left me stash of seeds from the 70s,
No
and
shit
you know,
on,
y'all don't
no
even
shit on
know
them, bro.
this is gonna be the next big skunk line because my old man left me the
Oh
seeds.
man.
And then what happens is the same shit that happens with everybody's 30-plus-year-old seeds is they're either not that viable, what pops doesn't grow worth of shit, or it's stuff from the earliest fucking days where shit wasn't acclimated to like growing indoors and growing under lights and all this other stuff. So what does grow ends up herming like a motherfucker. It's just not worth anything. Or the genetics are like old lanky sativas, and it's like every time I see somebody with that, my dad left me a stash of seeds. I'm gonna get into these seeds.
Like,
I'm gonna show y'all what real skunk is about.
because we gotta be honest, bro, and think about strands from the '70s, and they're nowhere close to modern strands this day. I don't care what anyone says. You can say,
Well,
in
it
my
wasn't. There
opinion,
was no hybridization. There was no.
right?
Everything back then was people taking weed out of wherever the weed came from, whether it was from Mexican brick swag or whether it was Thai sticks or whatever. Taking those early strains and then starting to cross them and start to make new stuff. But most of what people were getting seeds from back then was just whatever was in a bag of weed they got.
Right.
Nobody was really selling seeds heavily in the 70s. There might have been one or two places, but it's not like today where there's a commercial market for seeds and
Right.
you can just go anywhere and buy ganja seeds. Even for me, like through the late 90s and early 2000s, the only places you could really get seeds were in Cannabis Culture magazine from Mark Emery. You could get them from Amsterdam. You could get them from Canada. Like for a long time, that was it. Like you went to Canada or you went to Amsterdam and you bought seeds. And I knew people that would just take trips to Amsterdam, go spend a week in Amsterdam smoking weed and whatever you might get into in Amsterdam, and they would just buy tons of seeds and bring them back and breed with them.
You know, and the only guy I know in Canada right now that's making a lot of noise, and I apologize to my Canadians of my ignorance, is Canuck, right? But what's the cannabis market like I wouldn't even say market. I would say culture and like genetics coming out of Canada, man.
Um, Now that I don't know. I personally don't know a ton of Canadian breeders.
Right.
I do know that there's a huge culture for weed there. There's tons of smokers. There's tons of Canadian love for weed. And it's something that goes back generations. When I was coming up, it was always talked about BC bud. British Columbia was just pumping the market with tons of, with tons of flower, though at a certain point it wasn't always kind of spoken with the highest quality, because we would get this shit that was just, it was, anybody that knows the late 90s, early 2000s knew it as beasters, but it was just big, dense nugs with no trichomes. They looked like they were power trimmed. They all looked absolutely the same. They looked like they needed 4 more weeks on the plant, but
Yeah.
it was big. It was heavy. Like it was clearly a strain that finished really fast, but we would get packs and packs and like so many pounds of beasters. And it was just, some people loved it. It didn't really get you high. Like it just didn't do much for you. Like but you would get tons of it. But like generally speaking, I would say of my business in the seed world, Canada is probably the one country outside the U.S. that spends the most, and then Australia, in my opinion.
Oh man, yeah, I never even thought about what type of cultivation stuff is going on in Australia. That's a great
huge
point.
Huge weed culture in Australia. Huge.
Really?
Yeah, and they love weed, bro, and they love American genetics. They love
I don't
flavors
know
and
one
seeds.
person. It's crazy. I have a lot of friends and growers all over the world, but I don't know anyone in Australia. So if anyone from Australia is on watching, man, send me a friend request. I want to see what you guys got going on.
I'm sure Scotty Shubs, one of my, I have a handful of really big customers, the people that have just been following my seeds for years and years and years, in Australia. And, Europe does a ton of seed sales. It's funny because there is a certain point in this country where, like, for a long time, all the genetics were Dutch. It was all greenhouse. It was all, Dutch genetics, and now it's almost exclusively American seeds everybody wants. Everybody wants chems, everybody wants diesels, everybody wants Kush, everybody wants, hype shit like Skittles and Runts and
I
all.
agree. When I was in Spain, and I would trade seeds, I would try to trade for their stuff because they wanted American. Just because it came from America, it was considered piff. Like, it's crazy. Like, I was like, this pack, like, I guarantee I barely know this breeder. I know you don't know this breeder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's like, I want that one. Huh? Cool, let's switch.
There's a lot of things changed in this country when shit went legal to a degree,
Dutch are
because like for a long time, I would agree, man. It's funny because somebody just said the Dutch are done in the seed business. I got to be honest. I don't know the last time somebody asked me for Dutch seeds. Like generally speaking, people buy American seed now because so many of the strains that people want are hype shit here. And I'll be honest with you, the last couple of times I followed like big seed company pages in Amsterdam or in the Netherlands, or, the companies that ran the seed business for 30, 40 years. When I see them now, they're all trying to rip off American hybrids. They're all trying to find whatever cake strain or whatever, whatever they can pick up in cut form here, and then just push out their own fems of it, autos of it, So it's like this, they want the same stuff. Everybody's running American genetics now. The truth is, what we're seeing a ton of is that now anybody can breed seeds. So you can be guy in the middle of nowhere with just your little grow and just your little island, and you can grow and breed your own great seeds and share them with other people all over the world. And that's what's huge that's happening in the market right now, is that anybody can breed seeds. So the gene pool is just exploding. And we're just seeing like so many people doing interesting and unique little side projects and you don't have to be a massive seed house anymore. We're not making selections from landrace strains, generally speaking, so you don't need 3,000, 4,000 plants to find a
Right.
killer winner to work
Right.
with.
And that's the beauty of cannabis right now, man. You can legitimately pop a 10 pack and find fire. Again, I know this is Dank Talk. This is Turk Bean Show. I'm not trying to gas them up. This Fruity Pebbles, I'm sorry, this Flintstone that I have has the most amazing awkward color I've seen in my garden.
So
I compare it to it looks like a brick home. You know how like a brick home is like that reddish. It's just so many different colors, bro. It's the most beautiful plant in the garden, honestly, bro. And I got some dank shit in the garden, bro. Like I would say between the Cushion OJ and the Flintstone are some of the Cushion OJ is just really pretty because it's just purple. It's dark, but the Flintstone, dude, it's like every shade in the spectrum. Like it's so beautiful, man. Like I cannot. It's just.
I've known so many people that hated on purple weed, and like
It's
it's
not
one
even
of those
purple,
things
bro.
that
It's like it's not even purple, bro. Like, I'm not.
yeah,
I'm not trying to hype you, bro. In the pictures that I seen you, it don't even do it justice, man. Like it is.
yeah.
It's every color, bro. It's crazy, man. It's beautiful. Hell of a job with that one, bro. I don't even think it gets talked about.
So like all of those terp drip strains, like that's once again like what it's kind of funny because it's just my example of like I'm trying to get everybody to smoke more kush. Like that's been a theme throughout all of my work. If you go back and look at pretty much everything that I've done, most of my work has been an effort to get people to smoke more kush. So that whole line, that whole Royal Goo, Terp Drip, like any of those strains, those are all just heavy kush strains that then I'm crossing to other terpy strains. So that one was
Fruity
it was
Pebbles,
a Jaws strain.
OG,
Pretty Pebbles OG
Zero
F3.
Milk.
Yep. And once again, like everything I've worked with from Jaws Genetics is awesome. He's another one of those people that's generally cool with people working with his gear. And so I've run a bunch of his Banana Kush. He did a ton of Banana Kush crosses. I've run and worked with a bunch of his stuff through the years. But
Hey,
so,
someone asked, is the Flintstone still available?
yeah, absolutely. Turpfiend.com. And we're running a 420 sale. That's the one thing, man, is I haven't done a whole lot of self-promotion on these because I don't want this to just devolve into me talking about myself. But we are running a 420 sale. We're giving a free T-shirt if you spend over $100. You get a free pack of seeds for every $100 or more you spend. For every $100 you spend, you get a free pack. So yeah, incentive to spend on this 420. We just dropped Pineapple Sorbet line, which is excluded from the deal. But some amazing strains there. You could get the new Lucky Charms strains. I just dropped those a few months ago. Those are all part of the deal. You can get 30% off everything, bundles, single packs. But yeah, man, that's all been part of my goal. Like, if you go back and you look at most of the strains that I've used mothers and, it's all just a goal to get people to smoke more myrcene. And like the easiest way to myrcene is kush. Like the easiest way to heavy myrcene levels is usually kush. And kush generally has most of the traits that everybody else loves about strains: short plants, dank plants, tons of resin,
Where did that
stuff like
color
that.
come from?
Man, I feel like 90% of the stuff that I work with is gonna purple. Like it's just I don't know. Oh, yeah, that's
I don't
right.
want to call it purple.
When I think colorful, like colorful, when I think of like color change, I just think purple because
Yeah,
that's usually what they end up.
yeah.
Like they usually just end up once they flush out and like kind of, you're not done yet, right? You got a couple more weeks, right?
I got a week. Yeah, I'm flushing now.
You got 2 more weeks.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a week. I can't wait no longer. Actually, hey, at this point, it's looking too tempting. Like, and that's the thing, guys. And I want to put that out there, man. It's an old saying in growing, man. When you think you're done, let it go 2 more weeks. That is great advice, man. But I am ready to smoke that one. I'm not gonna lie, guys.
Go buy it back. Go buy it back a week and give it 2 more weeks. You'll be glad you did. Dude, that was a mistake that I made a lot. Like, and it's one of those, like, we don't talk about the L's sometimes, but like coming up in my earlier days, that was something I was definitely guilty of, in a sense of like, I would get the big eyes. I wouldn't have nothing to smoke. And I'd be like, man, that plant looks ready, bro. It's like,
I'm ready to
I think
be.
we're on week 3 and it's ready to go. Yeah, I've done that. We've all done that, man. We've all done that. But the reality is, every time I did it, I kicked myself because I looked at what I got and it was so amazing. But in the back of my head was always that little thing going, 2 more weeks and it would have been, wow,
Today,
everybody would have
so actually, today is day 60, bro.
been, got 2 more weeks,
Listen,
dog.
I said I was gonna do 65. I don't think we can. I feel like we can meet in the middle, guy. I feel like we can meet in the middle.
74 days. 74 days is 2 more weeks.
Oh, bro. See. That's throwing me off. Cause see, it's so. Shout out to Virginia, man, for putting on something in the water, man. Bringing that back to Virginia. That's gonna be huge, man. So, I want to have some good medication, bro, for something in the water, man. Some beach event. You know, I always talk about smoking great reefer on the beach, bro. So, you know, it might
I
gotta
love
come down.
tropical weed on the beach, bro. When I'm on the beach, I want a fruity drink. I want some tropical weed. I want some tropical hash. Like, here's somebody asked a really good question, right? They said, along with trichome color, what do you look for at harvest time? So, like, this is a complicated question because people will tell you, like, 4 different things to look at. They're all important. Every one of them. Density, bud structure, density, how swollen are your calyxes, trichomes. To me, at a certain point, I start to get an eye because most plants will start to flush on their own when they reach the end of their life cycle.
Senescence.
So what you're really looking for, the first few things I'm looking for on any time when I'm pushing plants actually towards their ripeness stage, I'm keeping an eye on any herms, anything that's going to throw a male flower late. And I start to look for when the plant starts to drop chlorophyll. Excuse me. So when the plant starts to like yellow up on its own, I know that I'm within a week and a half, 2 weeks.
There you go.
And that's how and that's really the time where I'm going to start upping my water. But I'm going to, by that point, I've probably tapered newts depending on what the strain and the situation dictated. You've probably tapered newts by that point, but that's where I tend to go to just a hard water for 2 weeks or until the plant freaks out. Because some strains take it a little better than others. I had one not too long ago where like 4 days into like a hard flush, and she just shit the bed, nothing but yellow, herms like a motherfucker.
Dang.
It was, but it was one of those strains where like everything looks so good that you're like, oh, damn it. This wasn't a breeding strain. This was just me doing some tester type stuff with some other people's genetics. It was a really dank strain,
Bro,
and it was one of those where I was almost like, man, it wanted me to dig back in and see what else was there.
I'm gonna be honest,
because what I saw was great, but like, yeah, it's and I don't. Once again, the most disrespectful thing you could do is talk shit on another breeder and put another breeder down, because there's so many people out there that are feeding their family with seeds, and like it's just something that happens, and you just go, well, it was kind of funny this particular time because it happened literally as soon as there was a tiny bit of nutrient stress. She didn't have any problems the whole time. Beautiful plant going into 60, 65 days, and then as soon as I flushed her like twice, maybe, which would be like over the course of about 4 days, because I'll hit like heavy water, day off until it's dry, heavy water, which is usually, by that point, we're usually on an every other day cycle. That's like hit it hard, hit it hard.
Quick.
Right. And by the second day that I'd flushed, which was day 4 of flush technically, she just freaked. She just freaked the shit. And there wasn't a whole lot I could do because it was like, you got to go. Like I got, you're far enough along that I gotta get it out, but I just can't, I can't drag it
No,
along and let it fuck
for sure.
everything else up. And you just get into this point where you go,
Bro, in my
it was
opinion,
real. It probably won't smoke as clean as you would like, but like it's better than everything being flowered or seeded.
I feel like if you've never seen a herm in your garden, bro, I feel like you haven't popped enough seeds. I
Yeah,
mean, let's be honest, man. For a while, there's a lot of lazy breeding going on. Going on. You know what I mean? So I've seen strands. I've seen herms in some people's gear that you probably wouldn't even expect it from. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But it's a plant. It happens. I don't give a fuck what nobody say. That's just my opinion.
yeah.
I don't breed herms, but I just believe any plant can herm. That's always been my opinion.
Well, that's why so many breeders. Here's another one of those little, $1 million pieces of game. Most breeders will tell you their shit's 60 days because if it goes 70, it's gonna herm like a motherfucker.
Wow.
Like just going,
I didn't know
there's
that.
just certain strains that like once they hit a certain point of flower, they're gonna freak out. There's nothing you can do. They're gonna herm. So it's like they go ahead and tell you it's 60 days. But if if you got a trained eye, most strains aren't finished in 60 days. I don't know the last time I saw a strain at 60 days. I was honest to God, like, she's done. She's done. Get rid of her.
Yeah.
She's dying on the stalk. Most strains, especially polyhybrids these days that aren't super sativa heavy, 70 days is about the sweet spot. And like then it comes down to like how much stress can the plant take before it freaks out at that point, because the nature of the plant that we're growing is that it wants to breed,
It
wants to
wants
breed
to
more than
survive.
anything else. The whole flowering process that we consider to be the part we care about, the
Right.
bud production and resin
It's all
production,
reproductive organs.
it's all about reproducing. It's all
Yep.
about trying to grab pollen. And it's
Yep.
like, and we don't know that the resin being there isn't in and of itself in some way a way to grab pollen, like, for a strain that probably didn't have a ton of breeding options. And so as we see now, it's the nature of the plant. Like
Right.
nobody is doing, I don't know anybody that's doing F10s with an eye strictly towards no herms.
Right.
I
I
don't know where
mean,
that breeding's going down at. It's like that, and that's the way to do it, is to like inbreed the shit out of it. But then in that process, we get back to the whole discussion about the bulldog. You know the reason the bulldog is such a horrible breed is because it's been bred for its looks for so long that all of the other stuff that's important to being a creature and being alive and not dying
right.
has been bred out of it.
Right.
Because the only thing that people wanted was a tiny little dog with a tons of wrinkles, and that it was a small little thing, and they're stout, and that, and they're bred specifically for their looks. It's the reason
Right.
Dalmatians are some of the worst dogs to have in your house. It's because Dalmatians have literally been bred just to be white dogs with black spots.
Recession.
And so everything else has been thrown out the window in generations and generations and generations of breeding. So it's like we see the same thing with weed. You might have an eye on no herms, and you're going to do this long inbred line on no herms, right? And while you're focusing on that, there's 10 other things about how that plant lives
You
that you're not
allowed
paying
you
attention
allowed
to.
it. You bred out. While you're so focused on herms, you bred out the mold resistance, the pest resistance. You know what I mean? Anything. So you
Or
gotta.
anything interesting with
Right.
flavor. I mean, it's like you can, the notion is that people who buy seeds don't really understand that you can't make a golden seed. You can't make a seed that's going to grow dank in every garden it grows in. You just try to be better. You try for your wins to be better than your losses.
I agree.
Right? That's the goal for anything in life. So at the end of the day, man, if I can bat 80%, 90%, well, I'm crushing the game.
Right.
And that's the nature of it, is like there's so many breeders right now that have a very small eye towards what's important. And very rarely are those people concerned with whether their plants herm or not.
I'll tell you
Because
this.
you can look at what they start with. You're starting with any of the American strains that we were talking about earlier that everybody wants, the clones only, the sours, the diesels, the OGs. If that's the stuff you want, don't come at me about her. Does it herm? Of
Right.
course it herms.
Bro,
You should know that going in, because the strain that you've fallen in love with is a mutt. It's just a mutt
Really,
genetically. Like all of these strains that
all of them
people
are.
love, the OGs, the chems, the diesels, like most of these strains were bag seeds. They were made from hermaphrodite pollen that strayed from where it was supposed to be. And those are the strains that people love and covet. And, so it's like, if that's your thing, the next thing out of your mouth can't be, does it herm? If I'm working with sour diesel, you should assume it's going to herm. If you're running heavy strains, anything from Southeast Asia, like any of those heavy sativas, if you're running any of that stuff in your crosses, of course it's going to herm.
Bro,
Those strains weren't made to run indoors under LED lights. Like, that's just not the nature of what they've been bred to do.
supply chain, we've taken our King Neptune back to the drawing board three times. Three times, and we finally found one that we actually are. Because you know what's crazy? We found one we liked, and we were going to call that one King Neptune from the seed pack, right? Yeah, this is it. And the homie say, man, no, let's go back and let's just see. And boom, we found this one. And I'm like, wow, like, yo. So it's definitely a process, man. And I still think King Neptune seed release still may be another 6 months to a year, bro. Just because I want people to experience the same joy that me and my team experience, man. Like this is the one. Like it's special. So you do have to have a selective breeding when you're selecting, though. You know what I mean? But
No, absolutely.
start,
Absolutely.
start. But
Selection's everything.
it's something you always say too, though, man. Start with great genetics as a base and go from there. You know. It kind of like when you say when you use those South Asian, strands and landrace strands, you can expect for it to herm because it's exactly what it is. It's really quote unquote not stable. It's stable in a way, but it's stable in a certain way. That's
Well,
what
it's
makes it a
wild.
landrace, right?
Like there's
Yeah.
still a lot of wild genetics and stuff like that. And what you don't realize, especially with earlier, if we're talking about landrace stuff specifically, that stuff isn't usually bred to be grown under fake lights indoors with the way that we water. It's meant to be grown in a dusty field, or in not great soil. Like ganja, generally where it grows, it's not normally not something that people are, tilling fields of and this amazing soil recipe. And it's usually you stick it in the ground and it grows. And it's been bred for years and years and years to grow in those specific climates under those specific circumstances. And that's what they've, when we're talking about landrace genetics that come from a particular part of the world, these are genetics that people have grown in generations over generations over generations. So it's used to growing in full sun. It's used to growing in a big bush without any training. Like, a lot of what we consider indoor growing these days, the sort of pruning we do, the sort of training we
Yeah.
do,
That's
like a
not
lot of
going on
that
in nature.
stuff isn't how these plants, that's stress to them. So their response to stress is always going to be breed, immediately breed. If I'm a male, throw pollen. If I'm a female, make male parts and throw pollen. Like that's what they do.
Right.
That's their survival mechanism. So it's like,
I know one breeder for sure. I think his gear is solid, and he takes the land races and he works them. But once you work a land race, though, it's no longer a land race. You can
when
make
you
it
make,
an
especially
IBL.
if it's something that in a landrace sense came from open pollination, where it's essentially all the males and all the females from that year
Yeah.
just get grown out in a field, and all of them breed with all of them, and you can't really say what pollen is what. Then that's completely different than when you start to make selections yourself,
Right.
and you start to go down some particular selection line, or whatever it is that you have in the back of your head of what a great strain looks like.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that like
The lethal genetic, bro.
that's when we've changed it. But still, that doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, you can then take it to 10 inbred generations, and there could still be herms because you start with such a wild gene pool that it takes generations and generations to breed out the worst of those traits. That at one point, nobody was really thinking about whether it harms or not. All the weed seeds.
Right.
So like if
We're
you're
supposed to
going
do.
males and females, yeah, you're not out there picking out ones that throw a male branch here or there, because that's not really
It's
your
not even
concern. It's all
conducive to
going to
what
hash anyway, you know?
exactly. It's not even conducive to do that in the type of environment or production in which it's growing in. Like you got, places like that may have a field of acres, and they're not going to snoop through that motherfucker and find every male, especially
Even yeah,
when they don't have the resources.
well, like I said, a lot of the genetics in areas that are still growing those genetics, that are actually old world genetics, a lot of them are hash producing regions.
Right.
And so a lot of what they produce for is hash, and a lot of it gets seeded. They don't care. And that way they can have seeds for the next crop, and it's usually based on a line of cultivars that had particularly large trichomes, or they actually threw nice
Yep.
sized nugs. Like, it all kind of depends on, what was the output. You got to remember, what we smoke as flower in the US is foreign in parts of the world, generally speaking, where weed has been grown outdoors for decades. Like, in parts of the world like that, usually it was either for hash or it was for seed production for, hemp, whatever the situation, whatever your outcome is, like that's what you're breeding for. And so with so many of them, like indoor flower, that's not what they were bred for.
Right. So that's a great question someone asked. They said, so if you create a seed line in your part of the world, how long, and grow it outdoors, how long until it can become a land race? That's a great question.
Generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the short answer isn't. There's not a short answer. Like, there's not a short answer. The reality is it's going to take time for it to acclimate to that situation. And then it comes down to how much selection, how much selection is done. If no selection is done whatsoever and you just throw them out and make sure there's males and females every single year, then that's going to be completely different than once you start to say, okay, well, I'm going to pull the males, I'm going to select the females to do this and to do that. I don't know. And the other thing is, I don't know of too many areas short of Jamaica, because Jamaica is the one exception that I could tell you there wasn't weed on that island before there was people. And so the weed that lives in Jamaica, that's the old strains, not stuff that's new or hybridized, but the stuff that's been there for a while, didn't come from there. So it's the one area that I can think of where strains were taken from another part of the world and put there, and generally now are considered their own thing.
Right.
That probably happened over 20, 30 years.
And that's my way of thinking.
Or,
Because why wouldn't, let's just say, if I take my caramel grape donuts to Jamaica and it becomes the predominantly grown plant over generations, and it's the same plant, same gene pool floating around, why couldn't it be considered a land race? I don't see why it couldn't be.
no, yeah, I mean, that's what eventually happened to Jamaica. Like, it
Heirlooms
wasn't one of those things that for a landrace variety is naturally occurring. Yes, but like, so I mean, once again, we get into what was the origin of the genetics that were originally there. There's not too many places in the world where weed grows without human intervention at all. Like, that's just not, generally speaking, how that's gone.
Yeah.
Heirlooms are plants that have been passed down with a specific eye towards a specific genetic production, and has been heavily, heavily selected. But like, generally these days, landrace, there's not too many places where weed just grows wild in fields anywhere in the world that people aren't involved with it. Like, it's super rare. Even the stuff that you see these days that most people consider landrace is stuff that people are selecting for in their particular area, and planting each year. Like, there's just not a ton of places. Let's be honest, man. All the weed, once it left China, it became adapted to the area that it's grown in. It just comes down to how long people have been growing it there.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say, I guess, but it just depends exactly, like you said, how long has it been grown there? If it's been grown there over I say if the same plant has been grown in one region over 40 years, I would, me personally, I would consider it a landrace.
Somebody just mentioned India. The thing that always kills me about, the difference between weed that's grown in Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, and weed that's grown in, Southeast Asia is that Southeast Asian weed is likely closer in genetics to the original weed that, people first started cultivating in, before it left China, wherever it was originally located. So everything that's grown, even in Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, all started in China. And the difference between Southeast Asian, stuff that's still from those earlier stuff where stuff came from China looks completely different than stuff that's been grown, in a completely different region of the world.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it just comes down to who's growing it. Like there's just not a ton of like wild genetics. There are still, but it's just complete non-human intervention. No humans done anything with the plants. They're just growing every single year on their own. And they're drug type cannabis, not road hemp, just stuff that has no THC in it whatsoever. I mean, that's the difference, is that everything that we know and consider valuable, stuff that has high THC content or has bud structure that we like or any of those sort of things, that's not wild weed. That's because somebody picked for that. And even when you go back to the wildest of strains, somebody planted something somewhere. That's why it's there.
So what about a Durban? Like a Durban poison, would you consider that landrace?
I mean,
I don't
strain
think
that
so.
I know is Durban poison it's a hybrid of some sort.
I would, right.
It's
Well,
heavy sativa, but it's not the strain that I've seen that goes around that's commonly called Durban poison. I think it's a hybrid of some sort. It's not a pure landrace. It's not a landrace. And maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, once again, all weed came from China. All weed started in China. So the fact that there's different weed in different parts of the world, Africa has weed that's been growing there for ages. India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Southeast Asia, all of these are places that have, notable weed cultures, right? And some of them go back generations and generations, and they each have different types of weed that now, looks completely different than when it started there.
Right.
And once again, that's because of selections of some sort. It's because of, the stuff that got you high was the stuff that people kept. Stuff that didn't get you high wasn't what the stuff, what's your goal? Like that's when we look at why cannabis is anywhere, what was the goal? Well, mostly it's because people want to get high. That's the reason people have cultivated drug type cannabis for, millennia, is because people want to get high, the effects, and that alone means that it was selected.
I ain't gonna lie, that's a great point, man. Anytime natural selection is out the picture, I think it loses its ability to say it's landrace. So I never thought about it like that, man. If you're selecting it to grow in your climate, you've altered it.
You made selection, yeah. I mean, and that's what I say, like, sure, there's probably spots in the world where there's wild weed growing and nobody tends to it, nobody does anything with it, nobody messes with it. That definitely exists, but it's such a rare thing now, especially because weed is such a popular thing. And even in those small patches of the world where that used to exist, there's now people picking seeds and bringing them out and doing selections with them and, stuff like that. So it's like, it's finding stuff like that that's completely untouched by humans is getting extremely rare.
So I got another question for you. So you mentioned that, everybody's breeding, right? There's so many breeders. And you said that's a great thing because you feel like it opens up the gene pool. But essentially, I feel like everything that's getting crossed now is a cookie cross to another cookie cross, and maybe outcrossed, but then again, someone else is going to bring the cookies back. You know what I mean? Like,
it's just the popular stuff. That's just the stuff that gets hype. Like we can't get confused and think that that's the market. That's not the market. The market isn't watered down cookie strains. The market is so much bigger than that. The genetics market and the
Bro,
gene pool is so much bigger
no,
than
I
what you
agree.
hear
But
about.
when you see IG posts of people posting their genetics, just a lot of people, what's in it?
I see tons of stuff. I see tons of stuff with tons of people working with amazing strains. And I think what's happened is I will admit that that was the case for a little bit. Like I definitely saw a lot of smaller breeders working with whatever was
Right.
hype. And the thing is, I don't really remember the last time a strain became super hype. And it's been a couple years now since for a few years there was almost a strain of the year
Yeah.
that like took over a whole
True.
year, and that was all
True.
people talked about, all people. And I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of the bigger seed houses have fragmented a little bit, sold to other companies. Like the seed market is kind of a weird thing post 2020 because once all that stimulus money disappeared, a lot of the people who were just in it for a quick, hard, fast buck, whether it be seeds or making seeds or selling seeds, a lot of those people
Yeah.
got weeded out real quick and fast because, like I said, once people stopped spending that stimmy money, it was a little tougher in the seed world for a lot of people.
You know,
For a lot of people that jumped
I
in.
think we had our hype strains. I think we had lemon cherry gelato and jealousy. Those were, although
Both
I really enjoy
of
both of
those
them.
strains are both of those strains are years old now.
But I think jealousy just won for 2022 strain of the year though.
Oh, I'm not talking about high tie, whatever magazines
Oh,
or I'm talking about the strains everybody's asking for.
yeah.
And GMO had a heavy run there for a couple years. Runts was really hot for a little while. But yeah, to be honest with you, man, those are usually companies that are selling you hype. So they're telling you what they think is popular and this and that and the other. But the reality is the market dictates something completely different. And what people actually determine as dank and what's hype and what everybody can't find the cut of and everybody's looking for. And I haven't seen a strain like that in a couple years, to be honest with you. I just haven't. And I don't necessarily mean it's the market or it's this or it's that. It's just that those
That's what
strains
I was gonna
tend to,
say.
the
Scope,
ones that
scope,
really become
scope now.
huge, the ones that really become huge are usually strains that there's a reason. It's limited for a little while and people can't get it, and then there's only one cut and people are trying to limit it. And it's like now that there's dispensaries and people can walk into a shop and buy most any strain they want, the hype kind of is kind of like, what hype? And that's why for me, it was never really about trying to find what was hype. It's trying to make the next hype, like try to make something that's so unique that people have to talk about it, or find something that's so different that people can't help but to tell a friend about it. And it's like when you go into it always looking for a flavor versus looking for something that's just going to be, you know, it's just
Dang.
pretty and it pops and everybody looks at it and goes, ooh, that's nice. Yeah, but the reality is those are usually strains that just have boring fucking profiles. It's nothing that you want to write home about. You just kind of go, it tastes all right. It's got a little bit of like a sherbet thing with maybe a little bit of gas or something, but it's not, and it's like, I don't know, man. Like for me, I
I'm
would
not gonna
rather
lie,
have
bro.
something that just smacks in my mouth and like an hour later I can't get it out of my mouth.
Right.
And those terps, every time the jar comes open, somebody goes, what is that? Like, what is that? What do you have? Like, that's what I want. And it's like, that's never the hype strain of the week. Like, it's just not. Like,
So the most, I guess, right now, the strain that has, and it's an old strain that has my flavor profile is Tangy. It's like I had some Tangy from the Dispo, and it was really flavorful. That's probably one of the most flavorful strains
yeah,
I've
but
had in
bro,
a
like
while.
Tangy's like 30 years old now.
Yeah, like, but
Like, hey, bro, we got to couple minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because we were running a little late, and I think we're like right at 3 minutes left. Huge 420 sale. Anybody's looking for strains, most of my stuff other than the pineapple sorbet stuff is discounted, 30% off all the way through 420. We are also doing free t-shirt, orders over 100, and then a free pack of seeds for every 100 you spend, all the way through 420. www.terpfiend.com, terpfi3nd.com. My Instagram's already getting reported again, so who knows how long any of this stuff will last. The fake page is killing it. I know 100 people that reported the fake page, and they were like, dude, I reported it, no problem, you know, like I know for a fact, and it's still up, and my page is getting flagged, and it's like all my pages now is like AI art, and like, you know,
that's crazy.
Whatever. But anyway, what do you got going on, Mac? Where can people find you?
Man, you can find me on YouTube at Mr. Mac Blunts. You can also find me here on Instagram at The Real Mac Blunts. And make sure you go follow Supply Chain, man. We're doing some big things, making some big noise in Virginia. So,
okay, Virginia, man. Man, that area was super weird the couple of times I spent time up there. Like, I was in Virginia Beach a couple of times in the 90s, and I was always told to mind my P's and Q's, and we did well to do just that.
You better on Virginia Beach. You can't even cuss or you'll get a freaking ticket, bro. It's weird. Like, you can't cuss.
Yeah,
I cuss every 5 minutes.
All right, man. Take it easy, man. We'll see you next week, dog. Y'all be easy.
Yep.
Peace.